300 in bowling is the equivalent to a no-hitter in baseball. It's the strongest indicator of expertise that a sport has. You have to strike 12 times straight in a row. Missing even a half inch from your target can be the difference between a strike and a spare. There are no second chances. So far in PBA history, there have been 32 300 games on television. In the first part of this series, we covered the pioneers, the first 8 bowlers to ever do it. Today, we look at those who came after, those who managed to raise the bar even higher on perfection, overcoming obstacles and telling their own unique stories in their chase for perfection. It's 1996, and we still have plenty of stories to cover. Starting off strong, let's take a look at C.K. Moore's first strike of his 300. Oh my god. I mean, most of C.K. Moore's strikes are decent, but a few of them are lucky. He's bowling against Parker Bone III, the veteran superstar who's fighting hard for the Bowler of the Year award. In his 12-year career so far, he has amassed over $1 million in winnings and 11 titles. You can tell he wants it bad. And as he struggles further and further into the game, Moore keeps getting breaks that Parker himself is just not getting. It's frustrating, and you see how determined he is through the entire game. Meanwhile, Moore just trucks along strike after strike. Now, I'm not trying to say that Moore didn't deserve the 300. Of course he did. There's a reason he actually went and did the thing. But from the perspective of the opponent, the only thing that explains this strike is divine intervention, which feels a bit like cheating. And considering C.K. Moore is a Presbyterian minister, that actually explains it. That's what it was, wasn't it? Regardless, this 300 is well-deserved. C.K. Moore had it all figured out and was able to stop a bowling powerhouse dead in his tracks. Good on him. Now, technically, I should only be covering the 300s, not any games that come before or after, but with Bob Learn Jr., we need to make a detour. It's 1996, at the PBA Flagship Open in Erie, Pennsylvania, and we happen to be in Bob's hometown, and the longest series of impossible events is about to occur. In the PBA, when competitors make it to the televised finals, it's in a format known as stepladder. Top 5 bowl in the finals. 5th place bowls against 4th place, the winner of that bowls against 3rd place, and the winner of that bowls against 2nd, and so on until the winner of the final match is crowned. Up first is our friend Johnny Petraglia, and from the get-go, this match is heated. They strike back and forth, giving up no ground further and further into the game until Johnny throws a shot a little wide, and this ends up costing Johnny the game. Both Johnny and Bob proceed to finish off the rest of the game without missing once, 279 to 300. This is the second time in PBA history we've had a 300-300 tie robbed from us, and this is the last time it's happened so far to present day. Regardless, Bob barely skates into the next round, now bowling against John Mazza. Bob misses early, getting 9 in the first and third frame, but otherwise keeps on striking. Mazza puts the pressure on, shooting 268 to force Bob to continue his string of strikes, making him need at least 2 and a 9 count to beat him. Bob obliges. Two down, 2 to go. Bob faces Parker Bone III, who other than Johnny Petraglia 2 games prior, is the most recent receiver of a 300 game from an opponent. He doesn't hold back at all, shoots 279, only missing once. Neither is Bob, however, also only missing once, on pace to shoot 280 if he gets all 3 strikes in the 10th frame. The crowd is electric, skyrocketing through his first 3 competitors as he makes it to the final, bowling against first place, Randy Peterson. It's gonna be another one of those games, isn't it? Yes, it is. Bob and Randy strike back and forth, both of them only missing once. Randy goes up first for the 10th frame and leaves the door wide open for Bob to win this tournament. But first, Bob needs to send a message. Across 4 games, he missed striking only 4 times. He not only set the record for the highest 2-game set on television of 570, he set the record for the highest 3-game set of 850 and the highest 4-game set of 1,129. No one was remotely in the same stratosphere as him. Even considering the ridiculously strong talent he was against, he was untouchable. If you combine all 5 bowler scores, they had a composite average of 276.5 across 5 bowlers in 8 games. This is unheard of. There has never been this level of domination, and as of today, there still hasn't. Shooting 300 on TV is a 1 in a million event. Whatever happened here in Erie, Pennsylvania was leagues beyond that. Speaking of breaking barriers, we have another youngster entering the road to perfection. Jason Queen is only 23 years old, bowling against Bobby Fleetwood, a man 16 years older than him. Even as of today, Jason is the youngest bowler to shoot 300 on TV, and despite it being his first year in the PBA, plus his opponent being much older than him, he seems unfazed. Even in his final strike, it seems like a relaxed celebration for something so important.
Best ball he threw in the 10th frame right there. The 12th one was a great shot.
Even more strangely, he said later that he didn't plan on continuing to compete, which is unheard of. He doesn't elaborate as to why, which leads me to wonder what happened to cause that decision. He clearly would have been competitive in the future. What possessed him not to chase this? I genuinely have so many questions I wish I could ask this guy. Why were you so relaxed? How were you able to pull this off at all? And most importantly, why did you decide to not continue competing? Unless he speaks up, I don't think we'll ever know.
Hello.
Wow, that was easy. Luckily, I managed to track down Queen and ask him a few questions about all the strange going-ons that occurred in this 300. Firstly, the reason behind his quick exit from the PBA is because of financial concerns.
That was in '97, and that was the end of the PBA on ABC that year. I still always had intentions of wanting to do it at some point, but at that moment in time, for those reasons, with where the tour was, I was just going to kind of take a wait-and-see approach.
Simply put, the PBA's contract with the ABC was quickly coming to a close, and there were no other broadcasting companies to pick up the association. As a young amateur, Jason can't risk making his livelihood bowling if there isn't a guarantee that the league will be able to afford the large payouts that the bowlers need to sustain themselves. Jason does come back. In fact, in 2000, after the PBA is bought by new owners, Jason joins again and bowls for the next several years. In regards to his lack of a celebration, it turns out the camera simply missed it, and he did throw his arms up after the final strike.
Yeah, they did miss, the camera angle did miss, but I did hit my knees and arms go straight up, but when the camera angle panned, I was already up from that position.
While that does explain the mysteries of his 300, there is one grave injustice that I discovered. In every single tournament, there is always an extra prize for shooting 300 on TV. Even the first 300 with Jack Biondolillo, he won $10,000. In fact, $10,000 has always been the minimum prize for a televised 300. How much did Jason Queen receive for his? Nothing. The tournament sponsor stated that they would give the 300 bonus, but only if the bowler was wearing their company's patch. Jason Queen was not wearing a patch, which meant he got no bonus.
Well, for 8 in a row here, remember the $10,000 bonus for a 300 game if you're wearing the Contour Power Grip patch, but unfortunately, Jason Queen is not wearing that patch.
There is so much to go in depth about when it comes to Queen's 300 that I might cover another time. If you want to see the full interview I had with him, I'll be making a separate video with all the additional questions I asked him. Moving on, 300 number 12 features Steve Hoskins facing off against, you guessed it, Walter Ray Williams Jr. If that name sounds familiar, that's because this is the second time someone has shot a 300 against this poor man. Walter is already a Hall of Famer and is a serious contender in the greatest bowler of all time discussion. He is bowling royalty, and yet this is twice now he's been dealt the short end of the stick, and it won't be the last. In fact, 6 years later, he will suffer the fate one more time. Why this man? Why does one of the greatest bowlers in the world have 300 shot against him? In an interview after he retired, Hoskins is asked about this very issue, and he attests to Williams' talent. In his own words, if he can do it with a pencil, he can do it. Basically, Williams is too much of a threat to be able to let your foot off the gas. Even if you're winning, you can't relax because he can very easily catch up. You need your A game at all times, which is a key ingredient in shooting 300. Unfortunately, we will not see Walter Ray Williams Jr. anywhere in this list, which is a mystery on its own. But nevertheless, Steve Hoskins stood his ground against, contestably, the greatest bowler of all time. Featuring another familiar face, our next 300 was shot by Parker Bone III in 1998. And this year marks an important change in the way the PBA was run. In 1998 and 1999, the PBA was being hosted and run by the CBS, which had decided to change the way the final matches were run. Welcome to the Golden Pin era. The most noticeable differences are, firstly, the pins are now gold. Secondly, and more important for our purposes, is that the live audience can be as loud as they want the whole time.
So Marshall, and here he is on lane 26.
Typically, the audience has to be completely silent when a bowler is up, and then they can resume cheering after they've let go of the ball. Now, they can cheer the whole time. These changes were an effort to rejuvenate the sport and make it more exciting to watch. But it also throws a curveball to the athletes who now have to contest with a cheering audience. And what better way to make an audience go crazy than 11 strikes in a row with a chance for 300. Now, it's Parker Bone's turn to drown out the audience in his quest for a perfect game. It's been less than 2 years since CK Moore threw a 300 against him, and this year he's bowling against Chris Sand. Wait, who is this? Oh, so Parker is bowling against two people, Chris Sand and Michael Mullen. Yeah, so apparently the format of this tournament calls for 3 people in a shootout round. So this is a lot of changes all at once. The pins are gold, the audience is loud, and you've got 2 other bowlers squaring up against you. Parker manages to balance all of these things and manages 9 strikes in a row and steps up for the 10th. Whoa, that was close. After that scare, Parker punches out and finishes his perfect game, having shown his merit against all the hurdles pro bowling could possibly throw at him. Hurdles are a part of bowling, and the real thing that separates the pros from everyone else is how you handle them. Now, there are hurdles that affect the bowler, but there are some hurdles that affect the history books, and this one nearly kept this 300 from being televised. On Valentine's Day 1999, the Chattanooga Open was being broadcast on ESPN. The tournament occurred the day before, and Steve Jaros just got home in time to watch it air. Let's see what the fans were watching this fateful day. This isn't right. Where's the show? It's supposed to be airing right now. Steve calls the PBA to figure out what's going on. Turns out the ESPN remote truck accidentally burned the timestamp into the footage, which made it unfit to air. With no other copies of the film, the only way this 300 sees the light of day is if they somehow can fix the film itself. The production crew with ESPN works through the night, into the next day, and the next day, and in a last-ditch effort, they remove the timestamp frame by frame from the film, saving this 300 from being lost forever. Would this still count as a televised 300 if it never aired? Would it be counted along the list of the greatest games on TV? There are quite a few unofficial televised 300s, for reasons varying from not being sanctioned by the PBA to the tournament itself not being official. But would an unaired official PBA 300 still count as televised? I mean, Steve knew he was being recorded. He still had the live audience. He was under the assumption that the entire world would be able to watch it the next day. So I'd say he was operating under the same stress as a normal event. What would, by definition, make this one any different? I can't answer these questions. I don't make the guidelines, but Steve is extremely lucky. There's something else about Steve that you should know. Prior to this 300, in 1992, Steve held a different kind of record for the lowest score ever on TV, a painful, shameful 129. Now, 7 years later, he joins the 14-way tie for the highest game ever on TV. Unfortunately, his low game did not stand the test of time as a new, even worse challenger approached. When Steve lost his historic low game in 2011 to, no joke here, an amazing score of 100, he says that he actually was disappointed that he lost his record. This 100, of course, was shot by Tom Daugherty, and his opponent's score, 299. But that's a story for another time. I had a few people ask me after I made the first part on why I didn't cover 710 split conversions on TV instead, because they're 8 times rarer. There have only been 4 in PBA history, but I don't think the rarity makes them more special. There's a huge difference between a 300 and picking up the 710. Yes, the 710 is an infamous split, but there's little skill involved when it comes to converting it. You just throw it pretty hard at one of the pins and hope for it to bounce back and hit the other. That's what happened for all 4 of them. You know what? Fine. Welcome to every televised 710 in PBA history. Sit tight, it's gonna be a boring ride. We start in 1958 when the PBA was created, and it took a while for a 710 to get converted. 22 years later, in 1980, Mark Roth pulls off what's never been done before in Alameda, California. A decade and change later, John Mazza bounces them around in Sunrise, Florida to join the club. Wow. Shockingly, only a few months pass for the next one. Jess Strayup converts it in Tucson, Arizona. Also shockingly, his shot looks exactly the same as Mazza's. And then fast forward 30 years, 18-year-old Anthony Newer sent the pin flying in Reno, Nevada. While this one is exciting because he was so young and it had taken so long, for our purposes, that's about it. A 300 is different. It's 12 shots of skill, accuracy, with a hint of luck to keep things interesting. I could go into slightly more detail about these, maybe for another video, but in all seriousness, a 710 is almost purely luck. Nothing compares. Our final 300 in the Golden Pin era is one of Mike Miller, matching up against 2 other bowlers, Danny Wiseman and Tim Chris. Mike is special in many ways. For instance, this is the way every other bowler we've seen so far has held the bowling ball. They use their ring finger, middle finger, and thumb. Here's Mike Miller. Notice anything missing? In an attempt to add some power to his game, Mike Miller decided to stop using his thumb. Clearly, it's working. Mike is loving every second of this. Halfway through the game, this happens. Yeah, I don't really know what's going on with that. Mike's got a problem though. While he's left Tim Chris in the dust, Danny Wiseman is still right on his tail.
For 9.
Okay, fine. Easy street from here on out. Since Mike is the third bowler, he has the luxury of watching his competition finish their games first before he gets the final 3 strikes that he needs. Oh, that's unfortunate. Oh, okay, this might actually be a cause for concern. Here's the thing, one of the best strategies to have in bowling is to watch your opponents. They can show you any change in the lanes that can make a difference between a strike, which we desperately need, and anything else, which we need to avoid at all costs. Reason says that Mike needs to make some kind of adjustment here and hope that it works out in order for him to strike. He doesn't have any room for failure. He has no second chances. It's this or nothing. Here's the thing, despite how poetic we get, 300s are not necessarily as special as we'd like them to be. Every 300 is entirely identical to another. It's 12 strikes in a row. The only slight variations to 300s are the opponents they fought and the close misses along the way. This kind of thinking is really disheartening to anyone trying to shoot 300 or anyone in the process of shooting one. It's tough to make your 300 feel more special than the others. When Norm Duke steps up on the approach for his final strike, he delivers this line. Let's make it yours. I think we forget what a 300 is all about. I found a quote from Norm Duke when he retired this past year. Bowling for a living is so different than most people think. It requires a tremendous commitment to excellence as well as a willingness to expose yourself to failure on a constant basis. Add in a myriad of travel delays and time away from family, just being happy becomes a chore. The players that mentally manage the grind of the tour and are able to stay in love with the sport are the ones that have the best chance of sustaining a good career. I have been on the PBA tour for 38 years and I am as committed now as when I started out in 1982. The most difficult part of shooting 300 is getting the opportunity in the first place. It's not giving up after failing over and over, after having the worst of luck, the worst experiences in your life, and finally overcoming the odds and probability itself, keeping composed while you're doing it to shoot 300. We are halfway there now, and what have we learned so far? Compared to the first 8, where we truly see how volatile the sport can be, I see the struggle to tame it. I see 8 people giving their all against one of the most difficult challenges of their sport and succeeding. Most importantly, I see the most skilled competitors beginning to master it. The sport continues to evolve, and we'll see how far they can go in the next part.
Come on, ball. Oh, my. Oh, my. A rookie. His first time on television. He has just made his 52nd 300 perfect game. But this by far the most valuable. 100,000, ladies and gentlemen. Bob learned. Perfection!
The best ball he threw in the 10th frame right there, the 12th one. It's a great shot.
Jason Queen with a 300 in the semifinals, and this crowd is on.
Dozen if Parker Ball the third can pick this from the top. Gotta hurry. It's good. He's got a 300 game for Parker Ball. Unbelievable bowling.
Takes a deep breath and let's just watch. He got it. There it is. $10,000 for Steve Jarrett.
bonus, 13,300 on the telecast.
And everybody's on their feet right now.
He did it! And yes, we do! Mike Miller has not only won the shootout round, he's $10,000 richer. Is it his? Yes! $10,000 bonus in the semifinals. A 300 game for Norm Duke.